Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, and everyone, I hope you enjoyed the holiday weekend. Lots of trick-or-treating for those of you who have little trick-or-treaters, or maybe you're just grown-up children like me and still enjoy dressing up in costume. I did a lot of trick-or-treating, which is why I haven't been on the airwaves as of late, and of course with the bye week, not a whole lot really to talk about. We had a Steelers practice on Monday. We're seeing some progress with a lot of players coming back, and now Mike Tomlin had his press conference earlier on Tuesday, and we get a little bit of insight into some of these players who are going to be coming back, and he almost like glanced over like Ben Roethlisberger as though maybe the media and reporters that are in the room for these press conferences weren't going to ask about Ben, but when asked if we could see Ben maybe even dress as a backup role as we did against the Cleveland Browns last year, Mike Tomlin had responded, all cards are on the table for Sunday. So, as we have been, trying to predict, I hate saying the word predict, Ben knows Ben, the team doctors know Ben, the coaching staff is aware of the situation. Those cards, which are all on the table, are upside down, and when they get to look at them, guess what? We're not going to see them. They're going to play those close to their vest, as to have another cliche, as to the cryptic Mike Tomlin press conferences as usual. It's funny to me, though, that within a couple of days, you had, I think it was on Sunday, we had so many different reports about whether or not, I think there was one that said Ben Roethlisberger still weeks away. I think there was another one that said Ben Roethlisberger expected to play on Sunday, and all along, the team here at Steel City Underground has been saying, we expect Ben to be back for Baltimore. But will it really matter? I suppose some of these other injuries are just as important. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have a nemesis in the Baltimore Ravens. They have not been good against the Ravens as of late. And just to kind of put this out there, because there'll be a special episode dedicated to this, probably sometime on Friday would be my guess, folks. I try and wait for the practice reports to come out, but everything's looking good with the bye. The Steelers got a couple practices in last week. Of course, the big hubbub being that Ben was throwing the ball some. He was out there, of course, because we said he was. If you saw him standing on the sidelines on Sunday, that means he's progressing well. And he was on the sidelines Sunday, just like we said to look out for. So, but Zach Mettenberger taking some practice reps in there and splitting some time with Landry Jones. Well, of course you want Zach Mettenberger to do this. What happens if Ben's still hurt? Landry Jones starts on Sunday, and Landry Jones gets hurt. Because, Baltimore could get after the quarterback. There was some high praise coming from Mike Tomlin. Not that he's ever one to not praise or talk up an opponent. Kind of his job. Must suck doing that. I hate talking, especially about the Baltimore Ravens and the Patriots in any type of positive light. Speaking of which, did anyone see the Buffalo and New England score from this last Sunday? What was that, 45 points that the Buffalo Bills laid or gave up? The Patriots laid 45? Is it 45? I'm going to look this up real quick. Just my whole point is that everyone really hates the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I know New England made some mistakes in this game. 41. I'm sorry, 41-25 was the final score in favor of the Patriots. But just to prove my point, I don't think Pittsburgh's far off. And that was without Cam Hayward. That's rotating Shazier back in, trying to get him in full-time. This is going to be very interesting as this season progresses and you get some of these players back. But back to the Baltimore Ravens, who I hate saying anything positive about. Did I mention that already? Sure, I did. I'm high on all this trick-or-treating candy. Like I said, a lot of trick-or-treating with the little one over the weekend. Had a few costumes for her, a few different costumes for me. I helped some with my wife works in the senior center, so we did some trick-or-treating there. And of course, helped out with the seniors who give out the candy, and we've got so much candy. And speaking of the candy, how about some of the people that come up? You got kids that are like full-grown teenagers, trick-or-treating, barely even have a costume on, wanting some candy. Look at you cross-eyed because you only give like one. You never know how many people to expect. We always buy a lot of candy. When we don't buy a lot of candy, we run out. Then we try and give some of the kids at the tail end that come in and give them a handful of stuff because we don't want any extra. And you have the parents, too. They have the little ones. You can carry them. I mean, my kid's basically at this age, too, where she's eating some candy, but she can't eat, all the candy that's given to her. And, mom and dad are going to be eating her candy. So we have her candy and the leftover candy. And, I don't necessarily, I hope people don't think that my kid's coming up and saying trick-or-treat and getting candy and then thinking, well, dad's just going to eat that. That's really not my premise for doing this. I enjoy just walking around and getting to know people in the neighborhood, and my kid enjoying collecting the candy, seeing other people in costume. It's a lot of fun, But my point is here, some of these parents come up with kids that are as old. I have a 3-year-old, by the way, as old as my kid or younger, kids that are barely a year old. And they have a little bucket or bag for that kid. They say trick or treat. And then all of a sudden they have this mysterious second bag. And there's no other kids. There's just a mom and a kid, and a mom and daughter, or a dad and son, and no other kids. And they have a second bag. Trick or treat. That's who these people think they are. Okay, off the football for a second, but geez. And then I end up getting stuck with extra candy, so I almost feel guilty. It's well, if you're really that hard up for candy, I could give you some more because I don't want it stuck in my house. I'm going to eat it. I think we still had Easter candy around here somewhere. So the Ravens, they've had a number on the Steelers, and they're a 3-point favorite at home, as maybe they should be. Ben Roethlisberger status up in the air. Ben Roethlisberger not particularly sharp, coming off of injury all the time anyways, as we've seen before. We saw it with the Bengals game last year. And then, of course, the Steelers just have not been very sharp against the Ravens over the last plethora of games. I think Roethlisberger beat them in 2014 at home, but he has not won on the road in Baltimore since December 2nd, 2012. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the last time the Steelers won away. That was with Charlie Batch. Actually, we got to go back even further to when Big Ben has actually won in Baltimore. That is December 5th, 2010. Almost an additional 2 years to the date since the Steelers have won in Baltimore. Got to change those fortunes this year. I'm telling you. Roethlisberger, of course, losing heartbreaker there last year. God, what an ugly game. Ryan Mallett is the quarterback. I mean, the Ravens won 5 games last year, and 2 of them against Pittsburgh. Of course, we know Josh Scobie largely responsible for the Steelers losing at home with Michael Vick as the quarterback. Wasn't so much the mistakes that Vick made killing the team so much as, they're in a position they couldn't even kick a field goal. And it tends to be the script here that the Ravens play the Steelers a lot of times when the Steelers have a backup quarterback. However, Roethlisberger has played in 6 of these last 7 games, and they've only won 2 of those, and both of those at home. Those were all following that 2012 win in Baltimore. So of the last 6, 7 here, just not looking good on paper. But these games are pretty close. You look at some of these scores. Even the one that Batch won, if you want to go back that far into 2012. Well, Leftwich and Batch, in fact. You go back since the shellacking, the 35-7 shellacking in 2011 to open up the season on September 11th. And the scores after that are 23-20, 13-10, 23-20, 19-16, 22-20, 26-6, a loss on the road in Baltimore in 2014. Then the big Roethlisberger coming out party 2 weeks in a row against the Ravens, the 43-23 win at Heinz Field in 2014. Then they've dropped the last 3 since that big game, losing 30-17 in the playoffs at home. 23-20 with Michael Vick last year, as I had mentioned, and then 20-17 when they went on the road facing a very banged-up Ravens team before that. So we're hoping now that maybe all of these injuries have subsided with the Steelers. They get some of their big players back. We're monitoring the PUP list, the participation of Ladarius Green and whether or not he will be activated. Mike Tomlin has said Green has done well since returning to practice last week, but they still have some time to decide on him. So we don't know. He's getting some first-team reps right now. Is this week the week They might wait one more. They may actually wait for Ben to be healthy enough to participate fully in practice with him. And they ramped up Ben's practice. Now, Tuesday, no practice. This was a Monday practice. They had 2 practices the week before with the bye, and they had several days off because that's how the new CBA works. The timing seems to be pretty perfect because almost everyone else, Tomlin mentions, you got Marcus Wheaton, which, by the way, Marcus Wheaton looks like almost a demotion on the depth chart. They now have Darius Hayward-Bay listed as a starting wide receiver. On the official depth chart the Steelers released, by the way, only 2 receivers listed as starters, and that would be Antonio Brown, Marcus Wheaton. They have them backed up by Sammy Coates. Oh, I'm sorry. I said Marcus Wheaton. Meant to say Antonio Brown and Darius Hayward-Bay. Darius Hayward-Bay sliding into the starting spot ahead of Marcus Wheaton, and Wheat is backing up DHB now. Coates backing up Antonio Brown, with Eli Rogers and Kobe Hamilton still rounding out the depth chart. So it'll be interesting to see here if Kobe Hamilton holds on. My guess is maybe Mahalik, the backup center, kind of backup center. I'm wondering now that maybe Marcus Gilbert is coming back to full health and Chris Hubbard won't have to start as the right tackle. If Hubbard will go back to being, well, of course, Cody Wallace might be healthy now too. Said he's progressing along. He has not been available all year either, and he would be the preferred backup center. Of course, Hubbard plays center as well, but Mahalik could be the man that's moved if Ladarius Green ends up getting activated. We made a whole bunch of speculation on it. Could even be Shamarko Thomas for that matter. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much they value Shamarko Thomas as a special teamer, but that's about his only role on this team. And I think all of the wide receivers might have a role at this point. Everyone's looking good. We'll see Sammy Coates, everyone else. Sammy Coates might be back around. Cam Hayward back to practicing as well. That might help the woeful Steelers run defense moving ahead. I mentioned that Marcus Gilbert on the field. Neither one of those guys, Hayward or Gilbert, mentioned any problems with their injuries. You got Bud Dupree back to full workouts as well. He's been medically cleared. We're going to see if he starts practicing. Much in the same way, they have the full 21-day period when he starts practicing, just like they did with Green, start practicing to decide what to do, and then maybe activate him to the full active 53-man roster. But all of these various injuries that have piled up, looks like the Steelers may have weathered the storm. They're above 500. Their neck is above water. They're still, now with the Bengals having a miserable tie, they are ahead still in the AFC North, and they could create some more distance with, I believe, a much, much needed win in Baltimore coming up. So this is going to be the one to keep your eye on is Ben Roethlisberger, really. I think everyone else looks like they're going to be full health, and Ben might be ready to go too. Now they're going to push him a little bit. I think they're going to see if there's any swelling or whatever with the knee, see if he can go. I'm very interested. I'm telling you, this is intriguing stuff because it's always someone reporting something different. But I do believe that I'll take the local sources over the national names like an Ian Rappaport, for example. A lot of these guys, too, do understand when you don't hear anything with some of the local guys. Many of these reporters, they have to get like a second source. But when you're on Twitter anymore, a lot of people can just spout off. Like, really, unless I want some integrity, I could spout off and just say, hey, this is what I think and know, and I don't have to have a source at all, which is what we see. And much of what we saw with this trade deadline pass as well. We get past Tuesday at 4 p.m., no moves made, no major moves made in the NFL at all. So the trade deadline has passed. No, Marcus Wheaton wasn't traded. I kind of doubted that he would be anyway. Who wants an injured wide receiver who hasn't played much of the year that's going to end up being a free agent at the end of the year as well? I don't see the Steelers moving him for any type of draft pick. Anyone who thinks they would have gotten a very high draft pick out of that is nuts. Wheaton was a third rounder. If they would have even gotten a fourth or fifth, I would have been very surprised. I don't see anybody willing to give that up. I think they're also looking at the Steelers roster knowing that they have 6 wide receivers. So if somebody comes off of this depth chart, such as a Kobe Hamilton or an Eli Rogers, They're not going to cut Wheaton, I wouldn't think, at this point. They're not going to cut Coates, and I don't see them cutting Darius Hayward-Bay. Of course, Antonio Brown's there for sure. They're just thinking, well, one of these guys gets released, and I could put in a waiver claim for him, or I could just wait until they pass through waivers and maybe make an offer. So this is very, very interesting with the whole trade deal. A lot of people were speculating and talking about it, and I'm just like, he's not going to go anywhere. Particularly so, the Steelers probably get a compensatory pick when Wheaton goes and potentially signs somewhere else next season, because they're going to have a loaded depth chart. I just don't see how they're going to end up keeping him, but that's for neither here or now. Having trouble talking, I'm telling you. I think it's all the Halloween candy just got me stuffed up. But Steelers returning to full health. We should see what that's going to look like with further practices. We're going to continue to monitor Ben Roethlisberger's progress at this point as well. And we're going to see where the Steelers are headed coming up soon against the Baltimore Ravens with a preview episode of the Steel City Underground podcast at that point. But again, my apologies for kind of being out of touch with you guys. I like to get you guys 2-3 some episodes a week, but difficult. Most of these have been previews. Most of them have been reviews, and there wasn't much news during the bye week. We're really stretching for some stuff, even over on the website. But if you'd like, check us out at steelcityunderground.com. Got some articles up talking about Zach Mettenberger and his record in Tennessee. Not too glowing, but you're going to want to give that guy some reps, like I said, in case Landry Jones gets hurt. Not much else to do or make of that. We're going to see how Landry and Ben split the reps this week and see who the starter's going to be. And in fact, Mike Tomlin said that Landry played above the line in his press conference. And it's one of the few times I've actually heard Mike Tomlin speak very kind of more positive than usual. Like I said, he's cryptic. He doesn't say a whole lot. He's not going to say anything bad about his players, but he talked about execution and whatnot. And I thought that was actually a pretty ringing endorsement for Landry if they had to go to him. My number one choice, I don't know. Talked about it last week on the website. Would you prefer a beat-up Ben Roethlisberger who could get injured worse, furthering the time that in the games that you would have to play Landry Jones, or you maybe suck it up and try and play one more game with Landry Jones, who just any number of things go different in that game against the Patriots. They nearly beat the best team in the NFL. It's got to be sitting in the back of your mind. Of course, Landry on the road. I don't know. Steelers on the road, period. Steelers against the Ravens on the road. Very tough one. But we'll be talking about that more later. Until next time, folks, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.